Hello. What's up, everyone? How the heck are you? It's Tuesday, I think. It's Tuesday. And I'm tired. Yesterday was a big day. I had a whole thing yesterday. I went to well, I didn't go anywhere. I am here in Portland, and if you follow me on Twitter, you might have seen I had Brian Douglas, B. Dougie, was here with the Open Sauce crew to do an interview with Kelsey Hightower, and then later an interview with me. So they did the interview in my studio, which was awesome. Like, so happy to have people coming in doing, just creative stuff in the studio. That's the whole reason I wanted to get this studio. And then, I went out, got pizza at one of my favorite spots here in Portland, East Gleason Pizza, and we filmed a Pizza Bite, which is a show that Open Sauce runs, where B. Dougie will interview somebody at a pizza shop, which I love the format. It was part of the inspiration for what I'm doing with Web Lunch, if you've seen that. And, it's kind of built on the same model as like Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee or any of those shows where people kind of do an activity together and have a conversation. And that was really fun. Then a bunch of folks from Portland came out. We hung out in the East Gleason Pizza lounge area and had a great conversation. And it was a full day, though. I'm beat. But yeah, it was super fun. And hello, what's up, Darshak? What's up, V-Dog? Charles? Jem, how you doing? Bridgewater, what up? Yeah, Jem, it was a blast. Like, this was so much fun. I'm so glad that I'm so glad we did it. It was really good. And then what else has been happening? There was a whole other thing. I don't know. I did stuff. Stuff happened. Anyways, yeah. You should visit Portland sometime. It's good out here. Okay, so anyways, I updated the title of this show to be The Cost of Betting on Yourself, and the reason I wanted to bring that up and talk about it is just that I've had a few conversations with folks where they've talked about, they want to go into consulting, or they're sick of the corporate grind and they wish they just had more time to code, and so they're thinking about doing something else. And I also, like, a couple people have talked to me like the only thing I do is make videos, and while I wish that was true, I thought maybe it would be good to have a little conversation today about just how what my life actually looks like as a solo founder, and kind of the goods and bads of it, because I think that I think about this because, like, I was talking yesterday, Kelsey was here, and Kelsey Hightower just retired, and what a dream that is. Kelsey's 43 and is able to do kind of whatever he wants, right? And that, I think, is a big goal for all of us. And then that sort of led to a conversation about, like, what is it that makes Kelsey so effective? And then that sort of turned into a conversation about, like, what is the state of DevRel right now? Because Kelsey, I don't know that Kelsey would ever call himself a DevRel engineer, but I feel like he's sort of held up in a lot of cases as the blueprint for what great DevRel looks like. And then we were sort of talking about, like, the fact that a lot of the DevRel folks, like myself, are starting to go independent as opposed to working for companies. And so, you'll have to watch the Pizza Bite when it comes out, because B. Dougie and I get into the state of DevRel. So I don't want to talk about that today, but I do want to talk about this idea of going independent and what it actually means, because a couple conversations that we had, it was sort of implied that, like, the reason that someone like Kelsey is so successful is because he speaks a lot, does a lot of public speaking, is good on camera and so on and so forth. And the implication there is that that's sort of like what he does. And I've had the same conversation where people look at the work that I do, and the implication is that, my day to day is I'm doing 40 hours a week of just active video creation. And that's just definitely, not the case. So, I'm tired, man. I haven't been sleeping great this week. I don't know why, but I kind of know why. When you've got a big project coming up, like I had this thing yesterday where I knew, I was going to be on stage, and I was trying to get everything ready. And like last week was kind of a stressful week. You may have seen my post where I was like, holy shit, I need a contract like right now. So I've been doing lots and lots of meetings, and all of that has led to me, not getting the best sleep of the year. But yeah, so let's see. I know, retiring at 43, man, it's the dream. If you and I don't know how you do it. I can't, I couldn't retire at 43. That's, well, maybe, hopefully. Jason's doing 40 hours a week responding. That's only half true, Chris. You know that. Did I find something? I did, and everything should be okay. It's always a matter of timing, because you get the contract signed, but then the payments have to go through, and so trying to line something up with 4 days left in the month is not ideal. So, yeah, the people who get 10K for a 1 hour speaking engagement, that's actually like a really good allegory, because that's sort of what I do now, except instead of speaking engagements, it's video content, right? And so, I do typically get paid somewhere on the order of like 10 to 15 grand to make content for companies, which is awesome. Like, I can't really imagine a better way to make money. And so as I'm talking about this, especially given my somewhat dour disposition today, I do want to make sure that it's very, very clear that, like, I love this, and I can't imagine any other way of doing it. But I did want to have a kind of a frank conversation about the realities of it, where it is not just like only fun. In fact, I spend about at least half of my time in sales calls. Just, conversations with people about what their company's doing, what the goals are, what their challenges are, and then I write proposals, and, I come up with ideas, like rough treatments for folks to pitch them on, like, what we could do together and what the potential impact would be. And, I get told no a lot, because that's part of the game, is you have lots and lots and lots of ideas, and most of the time it's the wrong idea at the wrong time, or the right idea at the wrong time, and you don't get the green light. So it's a numbers game, right? Like, I spend a huge amount of time just following up, like, hey, I know this wasn't right in Q4 last year, but, like, what's up now? I just saw you launch this new thing. It looks like things are going great. Do you want to have a conversation about maybe now is the right time? There are projects that I've been working on for 3 years now, like 3-year sales cycles for a few things. And, I'm not giving up. I'm going to make them happen. I feel like that's what keeps me going, is knowing that, like, I'm looking in the right direction. I just got to, make sure that I'm looking in the right direction at the right time. But yeah, jealous of that pizza, dude. Yeah, it was, that pizza was great. The East Gleason is awesome. If you ever get the chance to go to Portland, you should absolutely add East Gleason pizza to your stop list. Yeah, I mean, really, this is what I'm doing is sort of trying to introduce the film industry into tech, which is like, I have this, like, okay. So going into business, I was talking about this a little bit last night, and so I'm going to try to like organize my thoughts in ways that are coherent and not just me bouncing all over the place. But I think a lot about like what it means to go into business for yourself and like what the impact of that is. And going into business for yourself is effectively you saying, I have a point of view or an idea or a solution that is valuable enough at this moment in time that it will, it's going to provide enough value to somebody that they're willing to pay for it. And the trick is that you have to be not just like it's a good idea, but it's a good idea at this moment in time. You know, like I think a good example would be the what was the one that launched and failed? There was a product that launched that was effectively like exactly what the tech is that we use today. Like there was a, you know, like an iPhone before the iPhone sort of thing, or like touch screens before we got to where we are today. There were tablets that they just launched too early. Like they were the right product at the wrong time. And then we all caught up and we loved whatever the next product was that was introduced at the right time. And you know, it's always hard to know if that is a symptom of it was the right time, but you implemented it incorrectly, or like the collective mental model of how the world works hadn't shifted enough to be receptive to this new idea. So a lot of being a business owner is being willing to bet that your predictions on what people are ready for are correct. And so in my case, I'm making the bet that we're at the right point in time to need to shift in the dev tools industry, where we have to make something more engaging. Like I don't think developers are going to go to webinars, and we're seeing that developers aren't really buying tickets to events as often anymore. So if you're a company that wants to reach developers, you can't do it through the old channels. And so you can reach out to influencers, but influencers will help in the sense that like they raise global awareness, right? Like if you go work with someone like me or Anya Kubo or Theo or James Quick, or any of it, web dev Cody, like these folks who will like do a tutorial, they'll build something and show it off to a bunch of devs. That's great. But you also need like the rest of the campaign. You have to have a place for devs to land once they become aware of you. That you have to have a general awareness campaign so that your company is recognizable enough that when the influencer does the thing, you go, oh, I've been hearing about that a little bit. Let me check out what they have to say. And then all that has to turn into an actual funnel of like, once they land on your website, do they have somewhere to land? Is there something that matches up with the messaging that came through the influencers and through the awareness campaigns that trails all the way into the sign up, into the product, into the sales cycle, and all of those things that lead to ultimately somebody becoming a paying customer? That's my bet, is that we're going to incorporate video into that process, because mass awareness comes through doing something that we want to share and talk about. And I don't think we're ever going to share and talk about somebody's commercial unless we do something, like there's obviously exceptions to that, where somebody comes up with a commercial so clever that we end up talking about it and it becomes part of the cultural lexicon. Or I guess, I don't know if that still happens, but like, how we used to, anybody in my age range probably remembers the Got Milk campaigns, or the Budweiser frogs, or, these things that sort of became like cultural lexicon. Or if you ever see somebody my age doing a really cringy, like, what's up? Like, we all remember that commercial, right? And so there are exceptions, but I think in general, you have to sort of like build your way into the consciousness through a story. And most of what I see us talking about are TV shows, like we're all talking about, I see everybody talking about Love is Blind right now. When Game of Thrones was on, it was all we talked about. When, like these different shows come out and it like takes over the discussion. Great British Bake Off, people are talking about who should and shouldn't have been voted off and so on and so forth. So I have this suspicion that like that's the way we need to go. But am I at the right time? And that's sort of the bet that I'm making on myself, and the risk that I'm taking is that if I'm wrong, I could have the correct goal at the wrong time, and I won't be able to get any of these companies to actually pull the trigger. Like I won't be able to get them to actually take the risk and make the thing. And it won't matter if I'm right because I wasn't able to convince anybody that I was right. And then then the other thing is like, okay, well, if I decide that I'm wrong, then what does that mean? Like, do I go back and get a job and then in maybe 6 months or a year, somebody else makes this move, and then I realize that all I had to do was hold out for a little bit longer, and I would have gotten there, right? And so it's this sort of internal math of how right am I? How much do I trust my convictions? And also, how confident am I that the industry is going to move in the way that I think it needs to, within the time frame that doesn't mean that I totally blow up my life trying to keep this dream alive when nobody wants to pay for it. So spuds, yeah, exactly, right. And yeah, managing your career and job hunting and all that kind of stuff. Well, okay, so this is actually a good point. So get some rest and better work-life balance. I ran some math, and like I work really weird hours. I don't do traditional 9 to 5, but I also only work like 35 to 45 hours a week, depending on how like pressed something is. So I think the challenge is when the work is clear, right? Working 35 to 45 hours is no problem. When the future is uncertain, it's not like work, it's like a constant doubt that maybe you're wrong. And that's a big fear that I have, is that, maybe I'm just like, maybe my timing's off, and maybe I'm betting a year too early or 5 years too early on how this is going to go. And I'm going to, eventually I'll be a footnote in the story of how this all happened, where they'll say like, yes, the failed attempts of Learn with Jason were like, a few years ahead of this, and and like the vision was there, but the willingness of the industry wasn't, right? Or probably more likely is no one will remember at all. And the person who gets the timing right is the one that actually makes the notes. But yeah, I think it's tricky. And this is, again, like one of the risks of going solo, is that like, it's not about the work, it's about the environment of the company, right? Like if you are ultimately in charge, then you're never like done working, if that makes sense. Like I'm not actively working. I'll get off, I'll close my laptop down, I'll be, watching TV, or I'll be out with friends or whatever. But then in the back of my head, I'm always kind of like thinking about something, like what could I be doing? What would an interesting idea be? Like, would this sort of conversation make a good show? It's just sort of like a low level you're always on. And when things get stressful, it's the same thing. You're not thinking like, I'm going to miss that deadline and get in trouble with my boss. It's like, I'm going to miss that deadline and I'm going to miss all my bills, right? And so that is, I think, one of the big things about going independent, is that it really does, it shifts the math a little bit, and it doesn't give you an option to not care. Like you cannot quiet quit if you're independent, and that is like, in my case, I think it's worth it, because for every week I have like this where I'm overtired and having doubts about the future, I have 30 weeks where I feel awesome, and I'm confident that I'm doing the right thing and that this is the right direction to go in. And so, yeah, I think this is it's very like tricky, you know? Yeah, Halt and Catch Fire is a great example of this, of like you got to predict the trend. Like, when is the world ready? Because if you're wrong, Google Glass is another great example. Google Glass was too early. Like, people hadn't built the mental models. The world wasn't ready yet for what Google Glass was offering. And now when we look at like the Meta goggles and the Apple goggles and stuff like that, it's very much like, oh, if Google Glass dropped today, I don't know that it would be as much of a joke as it was back in the day. And also, if it hadn't dropped back in the day, would we be where we are now with Meta and with the Oculus and the Vision Pro and so on and so forth? And so that I think is really it's really interesting. But yeah, it becomes a whole thing, and like, I'm also very fortunate in that, I don't have kids, and my wife is super supportive of this stuff, and she's also super capable and like does whatever she wants and is able to like bring in income and stuff. So like we're fine. Like, everything is fine. But it does create this sort of these moments of dread where the feast and famine cycle of contracts, it's hard to predict too, because like part of the reason that I was putting that note out last week that I was kind of panicking about is I've had 4 contracts that were they still are very, very close to wrapping, but they've just kind of slowed down, right? And that's not due to a fault on anyone's part. It's just, companies get busy, and we're starting to come up to the almost the end of the quarter. So people are probably scrambling to hit their internal initiatives, and, people are doing launches, and people are whatever, like, stuff is happening. And all that means that like my project that I'm pitching is on the list, but it's not the top of the list. So it just gets bumped as things happen, and like, it'll get there eventually. I'm confident that I'll be able to close those, but I thought they would close this month, and they didn't. And so, what I thought was going to be a big month for me ended up being a basically 0 month. And that, that's like a hard thing to predict when you're solo and the stuff you do is on contract. Like, I can't, there's nobody I can email and say like, hey, chop, because if I go in and I say like, go fast, they're going to say, oh, you're difficult to work with, and they'll kill the contract, right? So you sort of have to play the like, hey, just checking in. Do you need anything from me? I'm really, really excited to work with y'all and happy to get going as soon as you're ready. And they say, yeah, we're meeting about it next week. And you're like, great. And then you check in next week and they're like, so sorry, we had to reschedule that meeting because we had something come up. And they're like, that's fine. They're allowed to do that, and you don't get to get mad about it. Because, ultimately you don't work for them, right? So they're not responsible for getting you paid on time. They're responsible for doing projects at the speed the company needs them. So anyways, that's sort of the, and a mistake that I made was I was only working on big projects, and I didn't have anything smaller to like fill in the gaps. And so when my big projects all got slow rolled, I found myself suddenly like, I have nothing to do. Like, I have nothing to do, and I have nothing in the pipeline where if I don't put something small together right now, I'm in big trouble. And that was sort of the origin of that tweet on Friday. It was like, all right, I'll make somebody a tutorial, do a series of shorts, something to just help a company out, help me out, and something quicker turn, right? And I was, very lucky. I've got a couple like strong leads on small projects that are, I think, going to go through. So hopefully, this week is going to see closing out with good news, right? How do benefits work? Poorly. So I am currently, let's see. So I registered Learn with Jason as an S Corp, and what I thought I would be able to do is get a group plan, which is what companies do. So when you get on your insurance with your employer, they're on some kind of a group plan where they negotiate a rate, and all the employees get like they pay a little bit, or companies can opt to pay all of it, and then the company itself pays the majority of the health insurance, and you know, it tends to work out better. It's like tax advantaged in all ways. Well, it turns out you can't get a group plan if you're solo. So you need to have multiple employees to get a group plan. And I'm not hiring because if it's just me, I can tighten my belt. If I had this month and an employee, like what am I'm asking somebody to like not take a paycheck from me? That I'm never going to do that. Like the only way that I would hire is if I had like monthly recurring revenue. And at the moment, that's just not a thing. Like the closest thing to monthly recurring revenue I have right now is, you know, a small number of you are subscribed to, like you've joined the YouTube channel, which I hugely appreciate. But that's not paying a salary, right? And so that's sort of like, I got to figure out how I'm going to solve that problem eventually, because it can't be all contracts all the time. I'm gonna have to figure out something that has recurring. So we'll work on that. We'll figure out how that works, and I'll get there eventually. But for now, it basically means that I am paying for my benefits as an individual. And so for me and Marissa, my wife, to have benefits through Learn with Jason, which is what I thought I would be able to do, it actually just means I'm paying $850 a month for benefits. So, you know, I've got my benefits are silly expensive, and then, you know, it's like all sorts of complicated stuff. But yeah, my run rate is really high because I've got lots of, like, not lots of, but several contractors, and making videos is expensive. I've got the studio, and so, you know, I put a lot of pressure on myself voluntarily because I think it's the right thing to do. And again, like, my bet is that the quality of video is the difference maker. So that's the cost of doing business. Like, I gotta believe that this is right, and I gotta believe that doing it this way is how I get from before the idea to where the industry has actually kind of shifted and adopted this strategy. So I guess we'll see if I'm right. But so, yeah, like that's sort of yeah, payroll is a whole thing. Like, I run payroll for myself. That's kind of how I keep things going. It's all automated. I use Gusto for that. But you know, that means you got to make sure the money comes in on the right days so that the automated payroll thing actually can run, or else you get the note that like, hey, you don't have enough money in your account to do payroll. Did you want to fix that? And I'm like, I sure did, Gusto. How do you got any ideas? Yeah, the Astro course is coming. I am working on it very slowly. I keep getting pulled off of it to scramble after some contract or another, but I'm pushing. Yeah, yay, American insurance. So one of the things that I think is important is like, quality isn't necessarily a deal breaker. Like Sanani is saying here, like, you can absolutely do a stream with like your phone. You can make a feature-length film with your phone. Like, it doesn't matter. You can make anything with any amount of equipment. And so my argument isn't that like everyone needs lots and lots of gear moving forward, but what I mean is more that I think the meta is going to shift. And instead of spending most of the money on things like conference sponsorships, on putting 5 people internally on organizing webinars that will eat up, you know, many days of their time and however much that costs in salaries and stuff, running paid ads against a webinar that will ultimately get 5 to 15 people to show up, and maybe that results in like 1 or 2 leads. Instead, what I'm thinking is that, you know, like, webinars will still happen, but they'll happen for a different purpose. They're like less often and more targeted. And events are something that you do for partnership building. Like, when you go to an event now, the strategy isn't like go to an event and meet all the new developers, because there just aren't that many new developers. Like you're going to an event where a lot of the crowd are your partners. It's other dev tools companies who have also sponsored. It's speakers who are, probably DevRels at your partner companies, and it's hopefully you've been able to get your target enterprise sales folks to send people over, right? And so an event these days, like a conference, is a partnership building thing. You want to deepen relationships with the people that you already know so that you can strengthen an enterprise deal and like keep that contract. You're preventing churn. You are getting a chance to get some FaceTime so that you can show a potential enterprise partner that you're real people who are actually invested in their success and you know what you're talking about. And it's a chance to like meet with influencers in the space, whether that's influencers in the like content creator sense or influencers in the like, this is the CTO of a partner company that's got got the industry's ear because of their like talent and views. So events are really, really useful, but they're not useful in the way that they used to be. They're useful in the you have existing relationships and you want to strengthen them, right? So I believe that the new customer meta, like how do you connect with somebody new? I'm convinced that that's going to happen through making really high quality video that is telling stories that people want to talk about. And so I think that that's series-based content. I think that that is, I think that that's like getting clever about how you promote your events. Like a live stream that feels like a Zoom call, I don't think is going to work as an event promotion strategy. We've all watched 100 of those. They all sort of feel the same. It's, I don't know, you just don't feel like you're engaged, right? But like if instead the events were to have you watch like an Academy Awards style thing or like a sports style thing where you've got commentators who are at a desk that are kind of filling in the space between talks, that are adding commentary, showing stats, adding detail, interviewing people behind the scenes, like the way that when you watch the Academy Awards, you actually get a better experience than if you were to attend the Academy Awards, right? Unless you're one of the celebrities. Because if you attend, you get to like sit in a chair in the auditorium to be a seat filler through the Academy Awards, and you get to like see things, but there's a lot of sitting and waiting and you don't really know what's going on. And I've been told that it's like, it can be cold in there, you can be hungry. So for somebody who's attending, you don't actually get access in the way that you do if you watch. If you watch the Academy Awards on TV, you get, the view of the person who's right up front on the red carpet, so you can see the outfits, you can hear the interviews, you get to through by proxy talk to the celebrities, and they talk about what like who they're wearing and what they're doing, and then you get behind the scenes, you get you get a view into the after party stuff that is just not available if you're if you're there as a physical presence, unless you're part of that inner circle, right? Usually you would show up and you would watch and then you would leave. Sports games are the same. You show up, you go into the stands, and like you don't get the replays, the stats, like you kind of do up on a Jumbotron or whatever, but it's not the same as being able to watch the game with like expert commentators explaining what just happened and why it's cool that this person just did that thing, or showing some stats, or like circling something, like all those things that happen when you watch a game on TV that allow someone like me who doesn't really watch sports often to understand what's going on, despite the fact that I haven't been keeping up with this team. Like I don't know who their star players are. I don't know what the new rules of football are. Like I watched the Super Bowl this year and there were a bunch of new rules, and had there not been an expert commentator to explain them, I would have been like, wait, why is that? What just happened? Because I thought the rule was this, and then I'd have to bother somebody next to me and hope that they knew. And so, you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a way to make like remote events much more engaging by investing in the quality of how we present them. And I think that's by thinking about the infrastructure of how they get presented. It's not just press play on a recorded video and we watch somebody give a recorded talk and then we like put up a hold screen and everybody chats and then we press play on another video, right? Like I think you have to sort of build out more experiences and make it something that's a little more engaging and tailored to the audience. And that's a lot of work, right? And because it's a lot of work, it costs a lot of money. And because it costs a lot of money, people tend to shy away from it. But at the same time, like I'm watching companies spend $50, $60, $70,000 to buy a booth at a conference that is not live streamed. And that, you know, if I ask somebody who the sponsors were at the last event they went, how many, like, I mean, honestly, like how many events have y'all been to? Can you name a sponsor from one of them? Like I can name a few if I think back, and there are a few that I just know sponsor everything. So if I were to like kind of take a guess, I could probably get it right. But it's not a memorable part of the experience. But at the same time, like I remember which car was the one that was being driven by the actor in that primetime drama that I was watching. I remember that like Etsy was if not the producing sponsor, then the most right place, right time judge on the show Making It with Nick Offerman and Amy Poehler. And, you know, I've permanently associated Etsy with this like DIY crafting thing partially because of just what Etsy is, but like that show was so good at it. To me, that's like, that's the game. That like we need to start doing things that put that money to better use. Like the $75,000 on a booth, I am almost positive unless you only use that booth for partnership building, it's not going to pay back $75,000. So it's a very expensive brand awareness play, especially as like conference attendance is going down. You know, like CES, I think was down like 70% in attendees, and Dreamforce was down like 65 or 70% in attendees. Like people just aren't going as often. So these really, really expensive booths aren't getting the return on investment the way that they maybe would have when there were 35,000 people at the event. So, you know, and this is my conviction and why I'm doing this in the first place, is I believe that by directing that money differently, like not necessarily not sponsoring the event, but like sponsor it differently. You know, like I'm talking to a company right now about how we would utilize their sponsorship booth for something way different. And I really hope, it hasn't materialized. It's one of the bigger ones I've been talking about. But if that does materialize, I'm going to have a lot to say about this, because, you know, I don't want it to come off that I think that like sponsoring events is bad. I just mean that I don't think we can run the same playbook that companies were running in 2018, 2019, because the landscape has changed. Like in a post-pandemic world, you can't just like throw t-shirts at people. It's got to be something different. It's got to be something that's got more. It's got to build something that can extend beyond the event, right? And so I think that is a big thing for me. Just scanning through. I want to start a business of my own, but have second thoughts because of confidence issues. How do I overcome obstacles like these? This is a good question, and I think so. I think, like, I've talked a lot about confidence. I have a whole video on it. Let me grab a link to that real quick. Where would it be? This video is somewhere down here. Here, confidence. So I've got a whole video on building confidence. Nope, that's not what I did. This one, confidence. So this video here is one where I talked about building confidence, and the gist of it is, confidence is a muscle. And you build it by getting small wins and then doing it again and doing it again. And it over time, you just start to take slightly bigger risks because they don't feel like risks anymore. And if as you prove to yourself that you are in fact capable of doing things, then each time that you think about trying something hard, you feel less intimidated by it because you've got this track record of like, well, when I've done stuff in the past, I've been able to figure it out. I've been able to make this work. And so this doesn't feel as scary as it did before. The other thing about it is I think there is some some work that can be done on trying to figure out what the let me try to phrase this properly. When you are thinking of going into business for yourself, there's the thing that sounds fun, and then there's all the things you have to do to make that fun thing possible, right? Oh, what's up, Kent? Yes, I would love to do that. I'll shoot you a DM. Let me take a note. Talk to Kent about Epic Conf sponsorships. I'll hit you up soon. And post, yeah, I mean, it's kind of that, but I don't think it's necessarily, I don't necessarily think it's that. I think it's that like every culture evolves, right? And when you start out in, like, I'm trying to think like, I don't know, with kids' toys, it was like I saw every single kid had a fidget spinner, right? And then the meta evolved, and they didn't want fidget spinners anymore. They wanted something else. And now I see, what is it? They all wanted like Roblox, right? And that doesn't mean that like fidget spinners are bad or that Roblox weren't good and then they were good. It's more that like our expectations as a culture start to shift, and the strategies need to shift with them. Like starting a fidget spinner company today is probably not the most lucrative thing to do because it doesn't have the zeitgeist, right? Like there's probably one company that has done a really good job of capturing the people who are true fidget spinner enthusiasts, and those people will go to that company, and you know, that's what they'll do. It's good. But like entering as a new player, you would have to sort of create a new meta to make that work. And I think that the same is true with like our industry is the same in a lot of ways. Like if you kind of look at the trends of how things move, there's a time when we're all focused on a thing. Like we were all focused on signals up until a few months ago. Right now, it seems like we're largely focused on like RSC or alternatives to RSC, React Server Components. There are big focuses on like reducing JavaScript, or like at what point should we compile? Are we go, you know? So anyways, you can see these trends, and then if you see where everybody's head is, you also know like maybe now is not the time to announce signals, because that would look like signals would just be like a catch-up feature, not like a big banner announcement, because we've sort of moved on from that conversation from a marketing standpoint. And so thinking about like, why would that be any different with the way that we reach developers? Like webinars used to work really well. A conference booth with free t-shirts used to work really well. But it's so well, like that path is so well worn that it's not novel. It's sort of like when you walk in and look at a grocery store, and like almost all of the packaging is exactly the same, and it all says like low fat, no cholesterol, low sodium, and like it all just looks like there's no differentiation. They all are kind of identical, right? So you just grab whichever one is your taste preference, assuming you've had it before, or you'll grab one at random if you don't know what the product is, because the marketing doesn't actually make it stand apart. That to me is I think that's the part that I'm betting on, is that we didn't focus on this through the pandemic because there were so many other things to worry about. But now, coming out of the pandemic, the rules are changing. Like we don't have free money anymore. It's hard to raise. It's hard to get new users. The markets are fairly competitive. And so for companies to stand out, to get new customers, to attract new investors, to, you know, do whatever the thing is that they're trying to do, you can't just do the thing that worked 5 years ago and expect it to work as well as it did back then, because people have seen that trick before. Right? You have to come out with something that's fresh and interesting, because that's what will get it to stick in somebody's mind, that'll get them to remember, right? Like I can think back on the things that are truly memorable in my career, and it was almost always a company that did something that was remarkable. And then after they did that thing, everybody else copied it, right? And it made it less remarkable, but you remember the company that did it first. Or if not the company that did it first, the company that did it best, right? Because you don't necessarily need to be the first mover, but if you can make the standard setting instance of an idea, then you can kind of go down as the company that like did it right. But so all of that is, just lots and lots of thinking about these things. What's up, Aiden? How you doing? Starting points are resources that you can refer to if you want to build your own JavaScript framework or library. Oh, if you want to build your own framework, that's a great question. I mean, there's some good, Kent C. Dodds was just in the chat. Kent's got some good information on like building good JavaScript. I feel like Matteo Colina has some good information. Ben Holmes is really good. Also very like communicative. Mark Erickson goes by Ace Mark on Twitter, is one of the Redux core maintainers and just has mountains of information about how they're publishing, how they're managing like ES modules and CommonJS and all of that. Jason, what's his last name? Develop It, the creator of Preact, also has a lot of really, really good information. But yeah, there's a lot of information out there. I don't have a ton, like most of what I do is I find somebody else's repo and then sort of use it as a boilerplate so that Jason Miller, that's who it was. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of good information out there. I tend to learn best by reverse engineering something, so I'll try to find a smaller library that I use a lot and figure out what their choices were. And barring that, I will do a bunch of research and then write a quick blog post to help me remember it next time. Like I just did that with how to set up a node server because I'd found myself in the situation where I needed to build a node server like 3 times over the course of 6 months or something. And each time I was like Googling the whole process. I'm like, this is silly. Why is this so hard to Google? So I put together a blog post so that next time I'll hopefully find my blog post first when I Google. Starting off in a down market is, I mean, this is a good point. It's kind of a dual-edged sword, right? Like if you have a booming market, like the pre-pandemic, everybody gets free money, everybody's valued at $1 billion, whatever. That leads to what I would say is a much higher risk tolerance, where you can try things that should be scary with nobody batting an eye, because what's $500,000, right? There's always more money in the banana stand. And that can be good. It also leads to a lot of noise. It leads to companies thinking that things are working that are definitely not working. It was just they were there and money was free, so everything seems like it's going great until the screws tighten and then they realize, oh shit, nothing we were doing was actually working. That being said, I think the down market thing, it can be good. But what I've noticed is that a lot of companies have really like turtled up, and they know they need to do something, but the things they're doing aren't working, but risks are absolutely off the table. So they're like kind of doing nothing, and they like, I don't know, they play a couple hits, right? Like they sponsor a couple big conferences that have always worked for them in the past, and they send their speakers to conferences, and they just kind of hope for the best. And then when you talk to them about something new, they're like, oh, that sounds like exactly what we need. But we don't have any budget to like try new things. And that can be the really tricky part of a down market, is like in a down market, it can absolutely work if you have somebody to go first. And that's the bet I'm making, is that I will be able to find somebody to go first so that we have things to point to So we can say, look how this worked. And I can get you that result too if you are willing to trust me. Or not even trust me, if you're just willing to do the same things that we did for this company that worked. And so that is a yep. But that's sort of the trick, is like in a down market, it's really hard to get somebody to take that first risk. It feels like, I remember when I was working at IBM, there was this very distinct vibe that if something was put up as a proposal for like a new feature, the question that would get asked first was, does one of our competitors have this? And if the answer was no, they kind of shelved it. They were like, well, then let's not worry about it, because we don't want to take risks. We just need to keep up with competitors, right? So it was a sort of like almost willing acceptance of being a Me Too company, because that was easier than like getting something wrong that would cost a lot of money because there was too much risk. So I think that's tricky. I have some concerns about the current state of things, because it does feel like it seems bad that we're reporting record profits and still saying like there's no money for anything. We can't hire, we can't try stuff. Seems like a harbinger of pretty unpleasant things to come. But I don't know. We'll have the full capitalism talk in person over a beverage. What's up, Florin? How you doing? Any advice for a front-end engineer who's been job searching for 6 months? Unfortunately, the only advice is to keep going. It is taking people a long time to get work right now. I've known several people with tons of experience who it just took them a year. What I will say is that some advantages you can create for yourself are, if you are capable of working in public, to like build portfolio pieces or things with the technology that's showing up in a lot of job descriptions, or if you want to get a certain type of job, build projects doing that type of work that you can put out in public, because that really helps when somebody's looking at a stack of resumes. If I go look at the work, if I see somebody doing the things that I'm trying to hire for, and it's recent work and there's a lot of it, I'm immediately more receptive to their resume, because I can see their output, right? Versus somebody who's got it on paper, but their resume is like, all of my work was internal, I can't show you, right? And that's not to say that like we wouldn't interview that person. It's just, it's much easier for me to put somebody in the let's interview them pile if I can see their work. So having something you can show is a big advantage. I think if you have any network that you can reach out to, or if you want to build a network so that you've got people to reach out to, warm intros are kind of the name of the game right now. It's not great, but the average job, it seems like, is getting hundreds of applications. And a warm intro is going to go a really long way to making sure that you at least get to the manager screen. And then other than that, there's a ton of things about resumes and portfolios and stuff like that are worth reviewing, but I'm probably not the right person to talk to about that. Danny Thompson is really good at like resume reviews, portfolio reviews, stuff like that. Tons and tons of information on his different social channels about like what makes a good developer portfolio, what makes a good resume. So definitely go check that out and make sure that you're not causing yourself any issues with like what you're presenting on paper. But otherwise, it's a tough market right now. And that doesn't mean it won't work. I think it's just slow. And I've also noticed that it's not slow because like all the jobs are disappearing. It's slow because like companies are taking forever to do stuff. I have friends who are like out there in the job market, and they'll finally land a job after months and months, and then a company will email them for an interview. They're like, dude, I applied 4 months ago to your company. You're just now emailing me. So a little weird out there right now, but people are hiring. There are options. It's just tricky. Non-VC backed business, profitable, don't hire more than we can afford. That is nice. I mean, that's a big reason why I didn't seek funding for Learn with Jason is like, I might have been able to convince investors to back this company because I think, I do think like the advertising agency for dev tools doesn't exist, or if it does, I'm not aware of it. And it, like, if anybody could make the claim that they could do it, I could make that claim. But I never want to be under pressure to 10x. Like, I don't want to have to hire 300 people and have like a sales division and it just, that doesn't sound fun to me. And I also don't want to spend all my time in board meetings looking at spreadsheets. I want to spend all my time thinking about the better things that we could be creating and like working with people on fun ideas. So, I don't know, the pressure that comes with venture capital, I think it makes sense for the right business, but I'm bummed that it's become like the only model in a lot of cases. So I am happy to see bootstrap businesses whenever I do see them, and I love seeing a bootstrap business get profitable. I'm hoping like, I mean, like Learn with Jason is profitable, but Learn with Jason is profitable in the sense that like everything is paid. It's not profitable in the sense that I am saving for retirement. Is it okay to risk the job for a new business? I think the answer is very much it depends. Like I quit a very good job. I was a tech executive. I was getting paid really well. And I quit that job to do this because I felt confident that it was the right place, right time to do this. So that being said, I didn't quit my job for 5 years. Like I've been running Learn with Jason since 2018, and I didn't go independent until 2022, November 2022. So basically 2023. So I let Learn with Jason run for 4 years before I took the risk to go full time on it. And so while I was, I was working full time and validating the idea of Learn with Jason, I was building relationships. I was figuring out whether or not people would pay, and all those other pieces that that you kind of like. You can always just take a bet on your gut, but there's a chance that your gut is wrong. So for me, my risk tolerance isn't like I'm pretty sure this is right. My risk tolerance is I've demonstrated that people will pay for this, if that makes sense. So I had actually replaced like 50% of my income with Learn with Jason before I quit at Netlify. Yeah, that's solo life, Kent. It's only like medium terrifying. It's probably going to be okay, right? But yeah, I think the safety net is a big thing, and that's the other part of it depends, is like what happens if this goes wrong. Like if you take a big risk on yourself and assume every single piece of it goes wrong, you never make a dollar. The job market's bad. You've got 12 months before you can get back in. Like worst case of, or I mean maybe not even worst case, just like you just can't seem to get that next job. What happens? Like, how much savings do you have? How long can you run on the risk before you have to turn a profit? If you can't turn a profit, what happens when you run out of money? Like, do you have somewhere to turn? If like in my case, my family would let me stay in their house, right? Like I could tuck tail, admit defeat, and go live with my parents, and I would be, sad. I would feel like I had made a big mistake, but I'd be okay, right? I would have to, dig myself out of some debts and it would make my life hard, but it wouldn't ruin me, right? I wouldn't end up unhoused or like in danger. I would just be I'd be in a bad way, but with my family there to catch me. And that makes it much easier for me to take this risk than if I didn't have a good relationship with my family, or if I didn't have, when I started, I had a good pad of savings to kind of keep things low risk. And it turns out doing home renovations is a great way to burn through your safety net. So, lesson learned. But so I do think that that's really important to consider, is like what happens if things go wrong, and like really play that out. Like what's the worst that can happen? And you don't want the answer to that to be like, I die in the street, right? Like how many things have to go wrong before you, and if the answer is like, I miss one paycheck and I have to live in my car, it's not time. Don't do it yet, right? Because you will miss a paycheck. Like I promise you. So there needs to be enough safety that you can take the risk and know that if things go bad, you've got some fallbacks. Yeah, that's a whole thing. Work till you drop. I don't want to. I want to work until I don't drop. I'm trying to do that Kelsey Hightower, man. I got like 5 more years and maybe I can just be done. He said yesterday when this interview is so good. You should go to Open Sauced. Let me find their YouTube channel. Right here. Go do this. Go subscribe here and watch until the Kelsey Hightower interview drops, because it's so packed full of good information. But one of the things that he said that I thought was really cool is they were talking about retirement, and he said, you can work on your career, you can work on yourself. I'm paraphrasing heavily here because I was only like eavesdropping, not like actually watching. But he said, he's in a position now where he can work on himself, like do the things to make his life enjoyable to live, and not just like try to hit the next career goal, right? And I think a lot about that, and what I don't know what's the game here, and what am I trying to do? And I think ultimately, I'm trying to get to the point where work doesn't feel like work. I think that's always sort of the goal, is if you can do something that's fun enough, then the work parts of it are way more bearable because it unlocks so much fun. And that's like, I spend 50% of my time in sales. Well, that's worth it because the other 50% of my time I get to make really cool stuff. And so that is sort of a trade-off that was made. If I was spending 50% of my time in sales so that I could spend the other 50% of my time doing work that I didn't think was that cool, there's no way I would be able to stick through it, right? And I think I would burn out like really fast. But yeah, it is very tough. But yeah, Tim Ferriss. Yeah, Tim Ferriss. I think a lot of advice from Tim Ferriss. I kind of feel like is just survivorship bias from Tim Ferriss, but I do think that being really careful about risk is great advice, and making sure that like a calculated risk is one that it's not like I'm pretty sure I can pull this off. It's like I've done the math and this should work, right? And like it's very different from like leap and the net will appear. I feel like when I was younger, I used to try stuff like that. Like I went and tried to be a rock star, very much like leap and the net will appear. I would get a job for 2 weeks. I'd collect my $60 from Wendy's, and I would go get in a 15-passenger van and go play, 3.5 weeks of shows, and then come back and do it all over again for 200 shows a year. And I just like lived, like every city we showed up in, I was like, hey, does anybody want to let us sleep on their floor so that we don't have to sleep in our car? And usually that worked out, right? And I was like, it's fine. I'm 19. Like, what's the worst that could happen? And like, we got away with it. Like we could have had far worse things. Like we could have had our van stolen, or we could have had like gotten into a car crash, or one of us could have gotten sick or injured or something. We didn't have that stuff happen. So I kind of lucked out, but like, that YOLO stuff taught me a lot about how bad things could get. And since then, with my agency, I let my agency get way out of control early in the days of my career, to where, I got so stressed out from working so many hours and getting so out of alignment with my own values that like I started losing my beard. It would just fell out in patches. And that was awful, right? And so all of that has led to me being way more risk averse, even though I know that from the outside it might seem like what I'm doing is very risky. I'm doing it with full knowledge that like my fallback plans are good. And if I do need to activate one of my fallback plans, I like, I'm not going to lose my house. I'm not going to like, things can only get like inconvenient. They can't get bad, right? And I know where my ripcords are, where it's time to give up on this. And because of that, this doesn't feel like a risk so much as, well, it's a risk, but it's a very calculated risk. I believe I can make this work, and I'm going to take this risk and put the work in and give this a solid try. And if I get to the end of 2 years and like none of the big projects are going through, that's a pretty good signal that I'm at the wrong time, and maybe I'll give it a shot in another couple years or something. Or who knows, maybe I'll start a company so I can just afford the marketing. I do think we're going to see DevRel and marketing both morph at DevTools companies. I don't think we're going to see DevRel as a department, and I don't think marketing in its current form is going to survive. I think we're instead going to see like developer marketing as the core pillar, like the department, and traditional DevRel duties and traditional marketing duties will get divvied up inside of it, but with more of a cohesive strategy, as opposed to like there's a DevRel team and a marketing team and they don't talk. Or like the marketing team throws things over the fence. It's like, hey, DevRel, can you write these SEO articles? Which is not a good strategy. Instead, I think there will be a like dev marketing, and then enterprise marketing will be a sidecar to the dev marketing pillar. That all sort of, there's a very specific strategy on how to reach developers, and it has to be integrated. It can't be like two departments working without talking to each other. So I think that we're going to see those merge together. I think one of the things that has been the biggest benefit to me in my life is that like I haven't had to use it since I was a teenager, but my parents are a safety net. Like I know that no matter how bad things get, my parents would bail me out if it was an emergency. And that the peace of mind of knowing that you're never done, right? If you make all of the big mistakes, and like obviously there are some things that I don't think my parents would bail me out of. Like I'm not going to go commit a bunch of felonies and be like, Mom, Dad, get me out of jail. But in business, like if I'm taking this risk and I'm just completely wrong, like I saw this T-shirt that made me laugh so hard. It said, I took a calculated risk, but boy, am I bad at math. Like if that happens, like I think I've got this all worked out, and it just turns out that I was so wrong and I blow everything. My parents they're not going to let me starve. They're going to take care of me. And that, even without using it, knowing that it's available is such a huge thing. Like I am very, very grateful for the community and the family, and all of that creates that network, and it becomes a safety net. Like the network is the safety net. Honestly, like a great example of why that's true. I needed a contract, and I just asked y'all on Twitter, like, I'm in a little bit of trouble. Somebody want to help me out? And I couldn't believe how much everybody showed up. Like it was unbelievable. And it really does like mean so much to have that type of support built in, because of a network, right? Like it's kind of makes me want to like cry a little bit, but anyways, it's good, right? It is very good to have that safety net. And so I also hope that you provide a great safety net for your kids, because it's very meaningful. Yeah, I think Kent making more from his side gig, me having replaced most of my income from my side gig, and I had steady half of my income, and I also had leads on how to close the gap. Like I wasn't sure, but I was pretty sure that as soon as I quit, I'd be able to replace my income, and that math ended up working. Like I think I did like 90% of my Netlify income my first year as a solo after expenses. Like my take home was the same as my take home at Netlify almost. Yeah, how many people are considering independence but don't have the safety nets in place? I mean, I don't know. It's hard because like I imagine that that's a huge factor for a lot of people, and I don't know how. Like that's a hard one because I don't know how you fix it. Like I know that there are ways to fix it, but I don't know what they are, and I'm not the person to speak on that. So I don't know. I hope it works out for you, Jem. Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Like I have the luxury of not having kids, so like if I take a risk, it's like Marissa's gonna whack me in the head if I do something too silly. But ultimately, we're okay. We're dinks. Like it's gonna be okay. Dinks meaning dual income, no kids, as if for anybody not familiar with that acronym. Do you pick up side projects to help supplement on Upwork? I rely on my network to pick up jobs. I think stuff like Upwork, it can be okay, but it tends to be so intensive to like source and manage that the hourly goes down to a point where it's like it doesn't even make sense to do the work anymore. Moving to the U.S., is there anything about the U.S. job market that you should be aware of? I don't know what the European job market is, so I can't say for sure. I would say it is very, very network heavy. So use your network, use your introductions, and just expect it to be slow. So if you're moving in the summer, I would be applying already. Like you will probably want to get that going like yesterday. Better way to transition ensure success of the side gig to not put all the pressure on it out of the gate. Yeah, I think if you can find a way to do them both, like in that assumes a certain level of privilege that you can, that you have the time. Like obviously if you're a full-time caretaker or you've got two jobs or whatever, like that's going to be less of a possibility. But if it's possible to try to do the thing you want to do full-time alongside the full-time job so that you can build it up, absolutely every time I would recommend doing it. Tejas seems like a pretty happy dude. I've only met him a couple times, but he seems like a pretty happy guy. Let's see. Do I have any recommendations on finding a dev community online? Yeah, I think like what I've noticed is that I tend to gravitate toward communities that are focused around building, like sharing creative kind of stuff. So even if it's not stuff that I do, like there are a lot of creative coders, they do like generative art and stuff. I don't have the time really to do generative art, but I love looking at it and I love seeing the creativity that these folks come up with. So like I join their Discords. Reddit is a good spot for certain types of community, for news and stuff like that. Discord is really good right now. There are so many Discords. I would say don't worry about joining all of the communities. Try to find the ones that you will be active in. Like it would go much better for your network to be really active in one or two communities. Like you can join mine, you can join Kent's here. He's got a really active community. Cassidy Williams has a really active community. There's the open source Discord. There's 100 devs. There's Jacob Ashley here in the chat has the Tech Commute Discord that just opened, and like any of these is going to be an active community of people in your industry. And so kind of get a vibe check, like which one feels like your people, and then just really stay in that one. Like like I don't know, I've tried to do the juggling 10 communities thing and I just can't give them attention. So I end up lurking, and lurking is fine, but lurking isn't participating. And what builds relationships is participation. You've got to be in it and talking to people and offering help. And when somebody asks for feedback, give feedback. Like that sort of stuff is really, it makes a big difference and it requires energy. So finding one or two communities that you can put that energy into is better than trying to join all of them and then not having the ability to actually keep up with any of them. Chat GPT for DevRel marketing. I don't know. I think if people start using it as a drafting tool, it can help. I think it is not like ChatGPT is not like novel idea generation. It is a like a pattern matching machine, right? So it doesn't generate new ideas. It sort of assembles existing ideas, and that's a lot of what like new idea creation is. But there's a certain amount of you can feel when an idea is good, and so far I haven't seen ChatGPT like. It's not creating the same environment that a good brainstorming session does, or like getting together with somebody and, I have an idea that's sort of like this, and then they say, oh, but what if it was like this? And then that gets your brain going. You go, oh, but what if it was like this? And then the next thing you know, you've built out something really interesting that's only tangentially related to what you started with. I think that DevRel in marketing is much more built on the feeling that it gives people rather than the specifics of the content. And that's why a lot of times when we look at something that's going just absolutely wild on social, when we look at it and we think, that's not that interesting, I could have built that. It's like, yeah, you could have. But the vibe has to be right. Like you have to get the right place at the right time and get people interested in the right way. And it's got to feel, like a thing that they're participating in. It's got to feel like, there's ownership. It can't just be I'm promoting company. Nobody ever wants to just promote company. They want to play along, and if it's fun enough to play, they're okay with the company's branding being on it, right? That's a very important distinction that a lot of companies get wrong. And so, each of those things is like, probably you could use ChatGPT as part of the generation process. But if companies start relying on that heavily, like I'm already developing if you send me an email that looks like it was written by ChatGPT, I'm almost assuredly not going to respond, because that's a good sign to me that you just generated that email and sent it to everybody you could think of. And it feels the same as when I get one that says like, hello, first name here. There's no reason for me to believe that you're actually interested in me if the thing didn't get any human attention whatsoever. And so I think that people can feel when some heart went into something, and the heart is really the secret when you're talking about like dev marketing, because all we care about is authenticity. Like devs love marketing if that marketing is being done by somebody who is earnestly excited about that thing. Like we all pretend that we hate marketing, but then most of what we're doing is watching each other talk about things we love, which is marketing, and like getting hyped on it, and then talking to each other over drinks or pizza. Last night, everybody was talking about the cool features of their favorite frameworks and trying to convince each other that, oh, you should try this thing, or oh, this thing's really fun, you should try that. We're all marketing all the time to each other, and we don't mind because it's fun. And you can tell that people are excited, like there's genuine heart going into it. And I think that's why, like Kent in the chat today, one of the reasons people love Kent is that you can feel it down to your very bones that Kent C. Dodds loves this stuff, right? Like there's no part of anything that comes out of Kent's mouth that feels like it was generated by ChatGPT. And I think that's what makes it special. That's why Epic Web is giant. It's the realness, it's the heart, right? So that to me is very, it's very important. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, budgeting to build an emergency fund I think is really good. Oh, dang, Josh. That's actually a really good point. So in an alternative to working 2 jobs to have yourself fully like set as you step out of the next job is to build enough of a runway that you can take time to build the new thing. And so Josh having 2 years of expenses in the bank, that's huge, because that means you don't have to work 2 jobs. You can in fact leave the first job and then have 2 years to prove that the new job's going to work, or I guess probably 18 months before you'd have to start earnestly looking for a new job if the bet didn't pay off. Also, Josh's stuff is so good. Josh is another great example of somebody who you can just feel the excitement and the care. Like, hold on, did y'all see? Let me see if I can find this. The Valentine, where was it? Yes, here it is. Okay, let me share this because this was very, very fun. This is a great example of what I'm talking about too, by the way. Did y'all see this? So Josh does this thing where he's, if you're not familiar, Josh is teaching like CSS and React and a bunch of web dev stuff. It's very, very good. You should go check it out if you're looking to learn. But then Josh also makes these like 3D models as part of his courses. And there's always this like wonderful attention to detail in here. And so, for example, on this one, this was a special for Valentine's Day, and he did this design, and then like, how delightful is that? And you can't hear it because I don't think my audio goes through on this screen share mode, but it makes like a light bulb hum when you click it. And so it's like click, and then it kind of does like zzz. It's so good, right? And you can feel you can feel how much fun Josh had making this. And I think that's what makes me love the setup. I think it's really cool. It's really special. So let's see. Hey, Vibob, thank you so much for the sub. It really, it helps a lot. It means a lot. I very much appreciate that. And for anybody who doesn't know, this is joining the YouTube channel as a paid member gets you access to extended editions of like 4 Web Devs 1 App, and I'm about to publish an extended version of my interview with Adam Argyle from the Chrome DevRel team. You get some behind the scenes stuff on the Learn with Jason Discord and all sorts of little perks. And I just reinvest everything that you subscribe with the channel into the channel. So I'm using it to, make more and better videos. So thank you very much, Vibob. I very much appreciate that. All right, Paul, that's it. You got to shoot your shot. Yeah, there are so many Discords. It's very, it's busy out there. ChatGPT writes the article. That's interesting. I've seen it go the other way, where you get the outline from ChatGPT and then have and then kind of like write the article based off of that. Yeah, look, I love it. I mean, this community is great. Like, I think it for me at least, I've found that what makes learning work for me is if it's fun. Like, I've never been someone who can sit down and just like power through something that I can't stand. And that made high school really hard for me, because so much of like the American high school education system is sort of built around like rote memorization and like standardized testing and stuff that was like, I'm sure that it was actually useful. Like, I know that I used some of what I learned, but it didn't feel useful. It felt like they were just saying like, all right, we're just going to pound this knowledge into your head. And so I thought I didn't like learning when I was younger. And then as I've gotten more into, doing my own thing where I'm learning based on what I'm interested in, I've started to find that if I can find something that's fun, like for folks who have a million hobbies, when you first get into a hobby and that sense of like, wow, what happens if I try it like this? And then you learn something new. I can learn anything that way. And the fun thing is that the more things I've learned, the more all types of learning have become fun, to where the act of learning itself is now actually pretty fun for me. So even if it's something that I'm not very interested in, like accounting, I can still have fun learning it. And that to me has been like such a life hack, because it means that I'm generally able to be interested in tons and tons of different things. And that means that I can pick up a little bit of information about all of them. And that helps me put together a better strategy for like, I'm not just looking at it from a dev side. I'm thinking about it from like, well, how's the sales team going to use this? How's the marketing team going to use this? How are the end users going to use this? What do people actually care about? Like, are they interested in this because of the feature, or are they interested in this because of a problem that it solves for them? And if it's a problem, which it almost always is, then what is that problem? Like, how would they describe that problem? And now I'm interested in like the research side of it. All of that means that I'm able to kind of give more well-rounded advice or create more well-rounded strategies. It also means that I'm very easily distractible, and that I waste a lot of time going down rabbit holes because it would be fun to do it this way. So, do a double-edged sword. But at the same time, like, I think that stuff is it's very like, strategically speaking, I guess, like I've learned that if I'm having fun, it's easier to learn, and I'm having more fun when I do it with friends. And so to me, the community is all about finding people who feel that same way. And that's one of the reasons that I love people like Josh and Kent and Cassidy and Sarah Drasner and so many other people that you can just tell that like at the root of it all, they're just doing this stuff because it's fun. And it's fun to do stuff with friends. And so if you can find ways to make that happen, you just kind of, it's that like you go further together sort of thing, because when I'm like doing a craft on my own, if I get stuck and I'm just looking at it, I'm like, I don't know what to do next. I can get sort of discouraged and I'm not sure what the next step is. So I sort of give up, or I end up down a YouTube rabbit hole or whatever it is. But if I'm doing it with a group of people and one of them knows the thing that I don't know, they just kind of unblock me and I'm on my way again. So I think that community vibe is it's really important, because you can, you keep having fun. When you hit those walls, you've got a friend there to guide you around it or help you knock it down if you need to. And then you get to stay in that groove and keep moving, instead of what I do, which is like I hit the wall and then I either beat my head against it until I'm, through. And that part's not fun, but I know there's more fun on the other side. So it makes it worth persevering. Or I take a hard right and I end up down some other rabbit hole where I'm learning about like the thing that made the wall possible in the first place. Now I'm like, I'm trying to learn the foundations of all that. And I'll eventually get around to going through the wall, but it's like a 3-month detour because I develop a new hobby by mistake. Josh's 3D stuff is really, really wonderful. The buttons are very, very good. Lots of love for Josh in the chat. But yes, Natalie, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I didn't even know you were watching today. Natalie, you're the best. Didn't like learning until college. Yeah, I actually dropped out of college because I was still having a really hard time with it. What's up, Sid? How you doing? Hope you're doing well. Yeah, pairing at work I think is a huge thing. Like the ability to like be, I don't know, like there's something very fun about learning a new piece of information. Like when I feel an idea slot into my brain and all the neurons light up as the thoughts connect, and I'm like, it's got that same like, I don't know, it's very cheesy and very like tropey at this point, but that scene in The Matrix where Neo gets a plug put into his head and he goes, I know Kung Fu. I feel like there is a moment where you go from not knowing something, you're sort of like holding this pile of unmatched parts, and then you cross whatever knowledge threshold you needed to cross, where immediately you like do a thing, and then it stops being unrelated parts and it starts to be like a thing. You just learned it, and you get that wash of like, I get this, I understand this now. And it's so like that, there's no better feeling. Like it's so good. And that there is a better feeling, because it's even better if you do that with a group, right? Where you're like in a group that's trying to solve something and you're kind of working on it together. And when you come up with the idea that feels right and everybody around the room just kind of leans back and they're like, that was it. We did it. This is the right idea. And I've had those experiences a few times where I was able to sit around with a group, like the early days of the Netlify DevRel team. We got to do such wild stuff because we had such a creative group, and we all understood that there were like really interesting problems to solve out there. So we would get into a call and we'd start kicking things around, and we'd tee up one idea and then somebody would riff on it, and then we'd go another way and we'd try something else. And at the end, we'd come up with something that was completely different from where any of us started, but it felt right. And it was like we'd sort of moved from not just the it wasn't just like I went to where I understood a new thing, which feels great. It was like we created something that solved a problem that we didn't know how to solve when we started the meeting. And like that feeling of connection when you mind meld with your team, oh, it's good. It's so good. Sid, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I mean, it is a 3-hour stream, man. Like, I appreciate so much that people are hanging out, but I get it. Like, I'm here for a long time. Sarah's book, I have, let's see, where is it? It's over here. 2 copies of it, actually. At one of these points, I should probably give one of them away. But I don't know. I also like it as it's a good little book stand. All right. So where are we at? What are we doing? What's happening? The super chats are really cool. I think you might be the first person who's used that, Sid, because I've never seen that before. This is neat. I also didn't know that you could just like send money, which is very interesting, very cool. Didn't know that was a thing. What did I cook today? Nothing. I got up and I came here. I have a coffee. This is the only calories I've taken in today. And I'm going to probably, I don't know. I've got a friend in from out of town. I guess this is kind of unusual, but like I am an adult man with a best friend, which I guess is somewhat uncommon. But I've known Nate is my friend who's in town, and we've known each other since we were like 11 or 12 years old. So we have known each other longer than we have not known each other, right? Like by quite a bit actually now. And we don't live in the same place anymore. Like we grew up together in Montana, and then I moved to Denver, and then he moved, like I moved back to Whitefish, and then we both moved to Missoula, and then I moved to Portland, and then he moved to Portland, and he moved back to Missoula. So like we've kind of been around, but we've kept in touch forever, and I think we've had like a lot of my philosophy stuff that I talk about, you know, because y'all know how much I love philosophy, is my, like I love talking about why I feel the ways that I feel, and like why things feel good or bad or valuable or not to me, and ultimately like how I can try to predict my own future in enough of a way that I don't, you know, that I have no regrets, right? Like that's the goal, is minimizing regret. And a lot of that comes from conversations that I've had with Nate, because when he and I were growing up, we sort of, without meaning to, like we became each other's therapists, if that makes sense. Like I think it's really healthy to to do therapy. And one of the big reasons that I think it's so healthy is that you get to externalize all of the doubts and the weird things that you think, and the you know, the anger that you have that feels like odd, like why am I mad at this? Why does it make me so mad that this person did this thing that has nothing to do with me? And if you don't talk it through, then it just sort of turns into this like ball in your gut that you just have to live with. And externalizing that through therapy or through a really good friend is sort of a safe way to let that evil out, and then start to try to understand why it was there in the first place. And with Nate, he and I, like early, you know, in our teens, we would start having these conversations about like, you know, like we'd be mad because, you know, the girl I liked didn't like me back or whatever. And then we'd sort of talk through it. And we started reading books that were very philosophically leaning, and I don't know, for whatever reason, this just became a hobby for both of us, where we were kind of introduced into, I think first it was like the Stoicism stuff, like the Marcus Aurelius sort of thing. And then that sort of turned into a lot of pop sci. And then that turned into business books as life went on, and we started like learning about human psychology. But all of that led to these really good discussions about like, okay, I feel X. What does that mean about me? What does that say about me? And then we'd kind of talk each other through it and land in places where, I don't know, I feel like I just have a better understanding of like where my own little bits of instability are in my psyche. And because I've talked about them so much, and because I've run through what parts of my own mind are like the most triggering to me, like what are the things that get me riled up the fastest, right? And because I've been able to work through that in these conversations with a close friend, I can see them coming a little bit more. And so the joke I always make is like, I in a group of people, I tend to be the stabilizer, because I don't have a lot of like ups and downs. And that's not because I don't feel things. It's because when I start to feel something, I've I've had enough conversations about like why I feel it that I can sort of see it coming and I can observe it happening and I'll feel the feeling, but then I just kind of like let it go, because it's not like I am not angry. I'm feeling anger. And if the anger is there, I can just look at it and go, why am I feeling you? And then I can recognize like, oh, it's because somebody violated my expectations, but it's not a big enough deal for me to care. And then I just let the anger float away. And because it's not worth it, right? Like I think I can see, oh, somebody violated my expectations. Like I can have a conversation with them about that later to say, I thought this is what was happening and then this happened instead. And to be completely honest, that kind of made me mad. So I want to talk to you about that, as opposed to being like, I hate you, you're stupid, we're fighting. Those sorts of conversations, that's fairly rare. Like people can get under my skin. Like don't get me wrong. I've a few people, maybe in this chat even, have seen me absolutely lose it in meetings when people push the right buttons, because I do have some buttons. But it's rare. Like I can count on one hand the number of times that I've gotten like out of control angry, for example, in the last 20 years, and that's just because I don't know. I've been very lucky to have, my own built-in best friend therapist thing. But so all of that is to say, Nate's in town. And so because Nate's in town, I get to, I'm hanging out with him this week. He's got his dog. He's got a big old Bernedoodle named Gino, who is a giant doofus, and he's the best. So we're like walking Gino around town, and I'm lucky I live in a neighborhood with a lot of dog parks, so we go throw the ball for Gino, and then we're like we cooked a little bit, but mostly we're going back to all of the places that Nate has either never been to in Portland that are really good, like stuff that's open since he moved away, or the places that he loved that he hasn't been to in a few years. So we're kind of playing the hits of Portland food, and that means I'm not cooking. So I remembered what we were talking about, and I got back to the point eventually. I get a gold star today. Oh, geez. What's up, Brandon? How you doing, man? Good to see you. Therapy is a gym for the mind. I actually really like that, because I do think there's a, I don't know, if for folks who haven't done a lot of therapy or like self-reflection or whatever, when I hear them talk about their feelings and stuff, a lot of times it almost feels like they feel like they're being attacked by their mind, and like their emotions or their emotional well-being is like this animal that is just sort of unpredictable and will sort of attack them without warning. And I'm so far removed from when I felt that way that I can't like remember, but I can certainly empathize with like the feelings of being out of control or whatever. And it sort of reminds me of like a gym for the mind is a great example, actually, because like I was having issues where I, during the pandemic, just like stopped working out, and I started getting knee issues, and I started getting elbow and wrist issues, and I like couldn't do stuff. There was a while where I was like left-handed because I couldn't use my right hand because my wrist hurt so bad. And I was wearing like a stiff brace, and like I couldn't really move my fingers because if I moved my fingers, it really hurt. And so I was like, this feels bad, right? And like that helplessness of like I can't control my own body because of the way that I've like not been taking care of it. And so I started seeing a physical therapist, going to the gym again. And now, like I have my aches and pains because I'm getting old. But at the same time, I have full use of my body. Like my wrists don't hurt anymore. I've got a little bit of elbow pain, but I'm talking to the therapist about how to correct my movement pattern so that I don't get that anymore. And like my knees are fine. I can jump again. I can run a little. I can run mechanically. I can't run endurancely. But I do think that is a whole thing. The funniest thing about my face is that I always make the joke that I have resting murder face. And it's because my resting thinking state looks so intense. Like I look like I want to fight. And especially if I'm listening, like if I'm concentrating, like my eyebrows go dead and I'm just like, right? And I don't mean to look like that. That's not what I intend to look like. That's just where my face rests. And so a lot of the time, if I'm not actively expressing something, I look like I am either not paying attention or want to crawl across the table and fight whoever I'm talking to. And neither of those things is true. So I don't know. I now I just think of it as like it's my own little privacy shield. Like no one has ever talked to me on an airplane. Like, because I'll be reading my book and my face looks like I'm ready to fight, and people don't like start. I don't get small talk. Like I've actually made the joke. Like I don't know if this is because of my face or just because I'm a deeply awkward person, but I have really never been able to like introduce myself to someone. I always have to get introduced. Like whenever I've tried to introduce myself, the experience I have is that I will walk over and I'll be like, "Hi, I'm Jason," and people will sort of look at me like, and then I'm like, "Oh, I'm awkward," and then I sort of like excuse myself from the conversation. But if I get introduced and somebody's like, "This is my friend Jason," for some reason that changes the entire game for me, and suddenly I can have a normal conversation like a person. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Rage mode. Yeah, the mean mug. Yeah, the mean mug's a big deal. Learn to get away with murder with Jason. Yeah, yeah. Same face when thinking. Yeah, the thinking face. I wish I could make my thinking face more pleasant, but like I've tried to intentionally have a more like friendly resting face, but it looks unhinged because it's very clear that I'm like putting on a face. So if I'm trying to concentrate and I'm like it's not working. Are you intimidating when you're at rest as well, Natalie? I'm trying to remember. I don't think I ever found you to have murder face. Did you have murder face? A couple times I remember saying things that caused you to look at me with a murder face, but I deserved it. Wear a breathe right strip? I don't think I know that one. Tap my phone and says, "This is my friend Jason." Yeah, a different kind of murder face for sure. Like the like you can see the top of my iris. So that's when you know you're in trouble, is when you can see the top of the iris. Well, I'm glad because I always worry that my laugh is just like, sometimes it's funny because I'll be in like a restaurant or something and I'll laugh and I'll notice that like people on the other side of the restaurant turn around to see where it came from. I'm like, oh, I'm loud. Should be less loud. You can type whatever you want. There's no rules in this chat. We can do anything we want to in here. That's not true. There are rules. Be nice, chat. Don't be weirdos. That is true. I don't want to kill you. I don't want to kill anyone. I want to eat cheese and bread. So I watched, there were two things that happened back to back, which have fully invaded my lexicon. The first was, there was a TikTok that was going around that I'm pretty sure was a troll, but who knows because people are weird. It was a guy saying, am I the only one who does this? Whenever I go to the grocery store, I always will get my groceries, and then I also go to the cheese counter and I get myself a little block of cheese that I eat on the way home in the car, and I call it my car cheese. And that in and of itself, I was like, I'm kind of on board with that. Like, I like a little car cheese. And then he lifts up like a 1 pound block of Parmigiano Reggiano and proceeds to like take a bite out. And he's like, am I the only one who does this? But I can't stop thinking about car cheese since this TikTok. And then Nate, who is a former, like, used to work in fitness, and he now works on the what's it called, Headspace app, like it's a meditation app. But he was saying that he will get like some kind of carb before bed because apparently it helps with your like feeling satiated so that you don't wake up hungry, which is like not an issue I have. I never wake up hungry. I'm not a midnight snacker by any stretch. But Nate is, and so he was saying, he'll have like a little snack, and so he we ended up calling it night bread. And so now, and like this is very funny for several reasons. One is that Marissa is very much like jokingly concerned about how much cheese I consume. I do think if I could find a way to do it that wouldn't kill me, I would make all 5 food groups into cheese. And then I also love bread. Like bread is something that if I don't have, like if I get a meal and the meal doesn't have bread in it, I'm like, it was okay. Like I wanted it to have, I needed a little something. And she's like, was that little something bread? And I'm like, you know what? It was bread. So anyways, I learned about car cheese. I learned about night bread, and now I won't shut up about car cheese or night bread. And Marissa is very unhappy with me because I made some toast last night and I was like, night bread. But she's like, shut up. If you have pizza at night in the car, is it night bread and car cheese? I quite literally made that joke last night. Great minds think alike. No such thing as too much cheese is also my argument, but apparently people disagree. A favorite bread? My favorite bread is the bread that I have in my hand, but if I was going to make bread, I would say depending on my mood, it's either going to be a focaccia, because I really love a good focaccia, like a fresh sourdough, like, fresh baked sourdough, not like the pre-sliced one in the store, or it's called milk bread. It's like a Japanese style of actually, I'll just find this recipe because it's so good. It's like a little bit weird to eat if you haven't had it, or a little weird to make, but it's like not that hard to make, and it's extremely good. My friend Jason Brown, let's see, is this? Here it is. Joshua Weissman did this recipe, and it's extremely good. I should have taken the UTM tag off there, but anyways, it's a Joshua Weissman. It's the video is called. Let me just share the actual screen for a second. There it is. That actually, you can't even read that. What's going on? This one. Look at that. So how to make the greatest dinner rolls ever. The Hokkaido, they're milk buns. But so these are fantastic. Let me see if I can just find his, just turn this off, but we'll see if we can find the still of the buns themselves. Look at these. Oh yeah, they're good. They're real good. Like, that's a good bread. These ones are fantastic. A good sourdough, fantastic. A good focaccia, also fantastic. But I've never been like, there's very little bread that you could give me that I would be like, I don't know about that bread. Like a good pita. Oh, there's a spot in Portland called Bluto's. Bluto's is it's so good. Do they have photos of their pita? I don't want to order. I just want to look at this bread. You get this roughly 15 seconds after it comes off the grill. Little hummus and pita at Bluto's. Oh my goodness. It could be everything. It's everything to me. It's everything I've ever wanted. Yeah, this place rules. If you come through Portland, put this one on your list too. This is I probably go here, probably once a week. Like this is such a good spot. A sourdough starter that I would recommend, make your own. It takes a little time to get going, but what's it called? What's it actually called? I can't remember the guy's name. Oh, it's just called Tartine Bread. This book is sort of weird. Like it's the head baker at Tartine, Chad Robertson, and he's not really giving you a recipe so much as he's sort of like writing a love letter to bread. So it's a little hard to pull out what's going on, but the baseline of it is the way sourdough works. I'm going to give Cliff's notes because I know this because Marissa has told me, not because I know this. Sourdough is the flour, and it picks up wild yeast out of the air and off of your hands as you work. And what makes sourdough unique is that like each baker has a different like microbiome, microflora, whatever it is going on their hands. And so you actually, like, you can't use gloves to make sourdough. You need to use your hands because that's what actually causes it to activate and become alive, which I admit sounds gross, but that's just, whatever. When you start looking at biology, it's just kind of gross. But so you're basically, you're kind of activating this, and then as you feed the starter, it gets more mature, and that's what makes it sour. And then you just sort of like have it forever. You don't have to feed it that often. Like once it gets healthy, Marissa keeps hers in the fridge and like feeds it every month or so, and then she'll make bread and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, this book does a really good job of explaining that, and it'll also tell you how to take the sourdough starter and move it through like a country loaf and a sourdough loaf up to focaccia or baguettes or other types of bread that you want to make. Very, very, very good. A love letter to bread. I think, one of the things that I've loved the most is when you find somebody who's like so into the thing they're into that when they write about it, you can feel like it almost feels like they're writing it to their significant other because there's so much care about the thing that they're doing. Like I think watching like Miyazaki talk about anime, watching like Anthony Bourdain or Jim Harrison talk about food, watching like, I mean, there's so many like these just wonderful moments where somebody is kind of like telling a story about something they care about, or like Ursula K. Le Guin talking about storytelling is like, geez, what a powerful moment, right? And so those are real good. Later, Natalie, thanks for hanging out. Bringing chefs from all over the world, have them start with the same water and flour to make their starters, and all the breads were still different. Yeah, super cool, right? And so basically everything that you make with sourdough is unique. It's like it's so cool. I think it's so fascinating. A log from the forest for the yeast. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and like the farmhouse ales or what do they call, saisons? They leave the beer vats open so that everything from the outside will kind of come in, and then they just skim the gross stuff off the top. But the natural yeast is what makes the beer like flavorful, and it means that every single time you make it, it's different because different stuff is in the air at different times. It's really like a really cool thing. Yeah, Bourdain's work, like I want to make my own version of Parts Unknown, of Anthony Bourdain's show, so badly. Like that to me is like a bucket list goal, is to get a chance to make something like that, because it's just so, I don't know, there's something really magical about his ability in that show to combine the things he cares about. Like you just sort of feel it, right? And it's like the show, if you watch that show in clips, you almost kind of miss the magic. But when you watch an episode, you can sort of feel his connection to the things that he's doing and to the people he's with and to the food that he's eating and the places he is. All of that sort of comes together into this sort of like magical experience of like getting to see through his eyes what it's like to be somewhere else. And I always found that sort of storytelling to be so good, because like, I don't know, I love journalism. I like it when somebody can go and do research and give me history and cite their sources and all that sort of thing. And I want that. I want that to exist. But I've never been that type of creator. Like I'm not a journalist, right? What I love and what I like to make is, it's not here's what is, or here's what you should do, but it's here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm experiencing. And hopefully the experiences that I'm having, or the stories that I'm telling, will have some value in, maybe you see a mistake that I made that you can now not make for yourself. Maybe I've learned something that you can apply that'll help you. But at the end of the day, I'm not telling you what to do, and I don't think I should tell you what to do. Your life is very different than mine. And any advice that works for me, it's hard to say if it worked for me because of the advice, or because of my exact circumstances, or because of who I knew, or like what I did before I tried that advice. Like everything I'm doing is a product of like where I am and what I'm experiencing at this particular moment in my life. So the advice I can give is what worked for me. And maybe you can try it. Maybe it'll work for you, but there's no guarantee. And I don't necessarily think that everybody should do things the way that I've done them. And I think there are definitely some things that work really well for me that I wouldn't recommend because they were stressful as shit. And there were probably safer ways that I could have done exactly the same thing without all of that stress and suffering, right? And so this idea of like storytelling as a way to convey information, not for the sake of like journalistic correctness. Like I'm not doing a biography. I'm not doing a reference thing. I'm telling my experience of the thing. And I love the way that like Jon Favreau in Chef Show does this, where he's not teaching you a recipe like at all. They don't teach recipes. You have to like pause the show if you want to figure out how something is made. But they're sharing like their own journey through this food in a way that is very relatable and like I enjoy. And the Anthony Bourdain stuff is that way. And you know, I think it's just kind of nice to get that that first person perspective of like, I experienced the world like this, and not you should experience the world like this. Just, you know, here's a story about what I did, and maybe you take something from it. Maybe something profound gets said. And to me, it's got the same value as like when I read really good fiction, because you're getting a glimpse into the way someone thinks. It's not like a how-to guide, but maybe you pick up a little thing about like, if I shifted my worldview to match that actually would make my life better. Like maybe I'd learn something that would make me feel better about things, or feel less bad when things that happen, because, you know, maybe it's not my fault. Maybe if I think about it more like water, like that Bruce Lee quote that everybody puts out there where he's saying, you know, like, oh, like, you know, be like water, like that. Those quotes, ultimately, like he says it like advice, but that's his experience. That's what that's how he's learned to view the world. And listening to somebody tell that in a way that's not saying you do it like this or you're wrong, but rather I do it like this and it helped me. It's a subtle shift, but it makes all the difference in the world. And seeing that in the context of like existing in the world too. I also like that because I don't like it when everything is done as like what I'm doing right now. It's talking head. You have to take my word for it, right? When you watch Parts Unknown, you get to see the way that Anthony Bourdain treats the people around him. You get to see the way he exists in the world. And obviously that's edited. It's TV. Like they're making choices about what you do and don't see about that story. But there's still a bit of reality, and there's only so much of being an asshole that you can hide, right? Like when you watch somebody who's clearly not a pleasant person, even if they're on their best behavior, you get the vibe. You can see in the way they treat people. You're like, something about you makes me feel odd, right? And so I love the authenticity that you get by watching somebody exist in the world as they tell you these stories. So anyways, that's it. Would be awesome to see that. I love that. Yeah, the culture in the food, 100%. Cooked with Michael Pollan, was that the one that was that the one that was like the 4 elements? That one, because if that's the one you're talking about, that one was fantastic. I loved that. Where can you donate to make it happen? Sub to the channel. You can, if you join the channel, joining on YouTube will get you access to extra stuff. I see that you're on Twitch, but you can also sub on Twitch. All of it helps. Like every little bit helps. And if you really want to, I guess there's a way on to like do the tipping. You can, I think it's cheers on Twitch, or super chats on YouTube, where you can just like pick a number and send it, and that does actually really help. because I will 100% put any money that y'all send me toward making this stuff. I'm working hard on making it happen. Got your first client with zero job experience and stuck with how to send a PDF to an email. Any words of encouragement? Yeah, I think there are some libraries that can help with that. I think probably the easiest thing to do would, well, if you need to send does it have to be an attachment? Because that's a little different than if you want to like send a link to download it, which might be easier because you could put that in like S3 or a similar type of cached thing where you could just have a link to download the PDF. If you have to generate an individual PDF for each person and then send it as an attachment, that's it's doable. There's some. I feel like I've followed tutorials on how to do this in the past, so I'm relatively certain the information is out there. And yeah, well, Aiden is saying here about joining the LWJ Discord. There's really helpful people in there. Like uploading and then the PDF goes to the person. That is definitely possible. Again, I think the trick would be like there are resources for that. It's definitely possible. Yeah, sending the super chats is very helpful. Super chats and bits. Thank you. I don't really understand Oh, that's true. Yeah. If you're on the app, on an Apple or Android app, like the YouTube app or whatever, if you go in your browser, everything is cheaper because there's like a 35% markup on the Google and Apple stores or something. So if you want to sub and not be charged the Apple markup, you can sub through the browser, and that'll put more toward the show and less toward Apple or Google. Apple's going to start taking a cut, so send from a computer rather than from mobile. Yeah, that makes sense. What's up, Catalan? How you doing? Everything is good. Like and I don't know, for anybody who's been with me since the beginning, you may have seen that I am certainly, I hope, looking better than I did when we started this. Sid, thank you so much. I appreciate you. But yeah, like, no, things are good. I put out the call on Friday, asked for some help. Tons of people showed up. Like I was blown away by how many people shared that and how many people reached out. I've got, even after we get off stream today, I'm going right into a call to talk to some company about, like what we could potentially work on. I got a small contract lined up yesterday that I think is done and dusted. I got to like send it over for signatures, but things are good. Like things are good. I'm tired. And I had a big day yesterday with lots of like interviews and stuff like that. So that also contributed to me being tired, but ultimately like life is good. I'm never too sad. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't realize that all of the bits went to streamers. That's really, really cool. Let me look at I haven't been on my Twitch dashboard in a bit. Well, thank you for the sub, Nolix. Thank you for the bits, Jim Jam. I appreciate y'all a lot. Very, very, very much appreciated. But yeah, so lots of good stuff going on. But let's see. All right, I think, yeah, happy that some leads landed. I am also very happy that some leads landed. I'm looking forward to hopefully things will, some of the bigger projects that I've been working on, they're all like close, like I feel like I'm at the, like, when you get to like you're almost at the finish line, you can see it. And now it's sort of just like making sure that you get the timing right. So hoping soon. Let's get some car cheese pics in the Discord. That's correct, everyone. If you want to get some car cheese, make sure you share those photos. That's very funny. Yeah, I know. Like Twitch definitely takes a cut of subs, but I don't know anything about the bits. Let's look it up. Twitch bits. Purchase bits. This seems like... What payment methods? How does it... cheering makes Twitch chat more engaging for the entire community. Okay. Cheering elevates your voice in chat with animated emotes, which is very cool. It expresses your enthusiasm through interactive leaderboards and extensions. Also, Twitch rewards streamers for cheers in a channel, typically at a rate of 1 cent per bit. So, in some special cases like esports tournaments or charity events, there may be different revenue sharing agreements. So, 100 bits is $1. I don't know what they charge for bits in the Twitch store. So if it's $1 for 100 bits, then it's 100% to the streamer, unless it's a special case. So yes, yeah, bits go 100% to the streamer. Sid, thank you for hanging out. It was great to see you. Thanks again for all the super chats. I very, very much appreciate that. Users are charged a premium when they purchase them. Now, is that like if you buy it through twitch.tv and not through the app, it seems like it's like $1.35 for 100 bits. Okay, so that makes sense. So it's not 100% through. You're buying bits at a markup, and then what you send me, like 100 bits, I get a penny for every bit you send. That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much, 51 Grims. I'm glad you're here too. It's great to see everyone. All right. So yeah. All right. What's everybody got in mind? I feel like I'm sort of starting to run in a circle here. So my Bezos always gets a cut. That's true. But so, I'm kind of running up against the limit of what I had on my mind today. So I might end a little bit early today, which will give me a chance to follow up on my absolutely ridiculous to-do list. Do you want to see my to-do list? It looks like that. It's bad. So so I might go try to knock through that. Weird Game of Thrones take. Bezos always gets a cut. A Bezos always gets his cut. That's actually really funny. Some words of motivation before I go. All right, let me see what we can dig up. Is today's topic the cost of betting on yourself? Yes. So that's I've been talking about that. So like the first hour of the stream, if you go and watch the replay, is very heavily on the cost of betting on yourself. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just a recap. I feel like I've spent a lot of my life being told by people that they see the stuff that I do and it seems magical or impossible for them, or that there's nothing, that I can do this stuff because I'm special, or because I have magic talent or something. And I always get bummed out when I hear that, because everything that I do is a small improvement over the thing I did before. And the only difference between me and anybody else is that I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm always trying to get 1% better than I was last time I did it. And so what I would encourage anybody who's feeling like you can't, or like it's not the right time, or it wouldn't work for somebody like you, is instead think of it as, if you can take one step toward that thing today and get 1% better, it might not feel like a lot of progress, but it compounds quickly. And if you do that for a year, you're going to be so much further than you think. And it really does just take having something that you believe is worth doing and then putting in a little bit of work on it all the time. And when I say every day, I'm not saying like grind and work nights and weekends. What I'm saying is, like, if you're going to do work in the reasonable amount of time that you dedicate to work, make sure that some of that work is pushing you toward the things that are most important to you, because a career and life in general is a pie eating contest where the prize for winning is more pie. So if you put what you want to do out into the world through your actions, people will start to come back to you and ask for more of that. So if there's a thing that you want to be, there's a thing you want to become, start doing things that make you that thing. You know, the major difference between somebody who is a entrepreneur and somebody who's not is that the entrepreneur started the business. That's really the only difference. Anybody can start a business. It's not very expensive and it doesn't take very much effort. What takes effort is building the thing after you've started the business. So if you want to be somebody who has your own business, if you want to be a full-time content creator, if you want to be a principal engineer, if you want to write a book, whatever it is, it's within your reach, and it's probably within your reach faster than you think if you put that 1% better every day mentality into practice. If you want to write a book, write 100 words a day. You know, a novel is like 30,000 words, I think. So write 300 words a day and you've written the book in what is that? 3 years, right? Like that's 300 words is not a lot of words, right? And I'm oversimplifying what it's like to write a book, but in terms of just like step progress, you know, it's well within your reach. And you know, if you start, it's kind of like cleaning. You know, if you say, I need to clean my house, but that's too overwhelming, so I'm not going to do it. But then you say, all right, I'm going to clean for 5 minutes, and you spend 5 minutes cleaning, and now you're in the zone, and so it's easy to keep going, and you just kind of get it done, or you get a whole room done or something. That sort of mentality, it really carries. Like Aaron Francis just wrote a post it's called "Do Literally Anything," and it was a great post because if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stuck, then the best thing to do is anything, because movement, it breaks you out of inertia, right? And so much of what we do is kind of in patterns that we build for ourselves. And so if we want to have a different life, we can just start making small moves towards something bigger, something that's more important to us. And that, I think, it really does make a huge difference and gives us a big opportunity to sort of be the captain of our life. We direct our lives instead of being a passenger on a path that we set 10 years ago and then are just kind of following because that's what we've always done. But it doesn't take giant risks. It doesn't take burning the candle at both ends. It doesn't take making enormous sacrifices. It takes a commitment to doing it and being consistent. And you can be consistent in as big or as small a way as you want, as long as you remain consistent. Like publishing 500 words a day, that's what made Seth Godin famous. He has been publishing a blog every day, and some of them are like 30 words, but he always publishes. He's so consistent, and he turns those blog posts into books. He turns those blog posts into podcasts and radio appearances and all these things that he does. That's his whole career. And all it took was the decision that he made that he was going to be a writer who wrote consistently. I am a content creator because I decided I was going to make stuff like I make consistently. And I do this stream every Tuesday. I do Learn with Jason every Thursday. I get an episode of 4 Devs, 1 App out every 3 weeks is about the turnaround time. I'm trying to do this web lunch. I'm aiming for once a month. We'll see if I can get that right out of the gate, but we're trying. All of those are, it's just you pick a thing and you do that thing consistently. And at first it was Learn with Jason. That was the only thing I could really commit to. And over time, I've been able to add one more thing as I've gotten consistent enough with the previous thing. All of that builds up a big chain of success that allows me to do stuff today that people look at and go, man, it's so cool that you get to do that. Like how does that somebody even get there? And the answer is, I don't know. I just kept doing stuff. I kept doing a little bit, and every day I was able to do a little bit more than I could the day prior, and a little bit more over the course of a few years, like in my case, 5-6 years. It's big. It's big distance. This is yeah. 10 years to an overnight success is exactly it. Like I desperately hope that at some point I will do the thing that finally like escapes into the next circle of awareness, and people will say that I'm an overnight sensation. And y'all will know that I've been doing this for like, I did my first public talks in 2007, right? So I'm 20 years into this game. Like I've been coding since 2003. I've been public speaking since like 2007-ish, I think. And if I finally do break out and get the chance to do something on Netflix or some, you know, some cable channel or whatever, that's going to feel like an overnight success, yeah, assuming it works. Like making a big assumption that I launch the thing and people like it. But if that ever happens, it'll feel to a lot of people like I came out of nowhere. But to the folks who've been with me for a long time, you know, I just do it. I do the thing every week, and I'm trying to get a little bit better, and I try to make everything I make a little bit better than the one I made before. And eventually that'll be big enough that I get to do the things that I dream about doing now that seem impossible. But I know that they're within my reach, just not yet. I gotta lay the stairs down one at a time, and that'll get me there. This is the pep talk you needed. I am glad that it was helpful. We have two lives, and the second begins. We realize we only have one. That's a good quote. I like that. I definitely like that. The people you leave behind is also very hard. Like, and that is something that I think really is a bummer when you sort of lose your network because your network was 100% tied up in the job. Like that, I wish there was an easier way to deal with that. But I mean, that's one of the things that I focus on, is trying to get more and more of my network into my life as opposed to my job, so that if the job changes, like, my friends are my friends. You know, Nate and I have been friends through all of my job changes because our friendship isn't built on jobs. And most of the people I see now, we're like in the same industry. You know, like Joel Hooks is one of my best friends, but we don't work at the same company, but we know all the same people and we work in the same spaces. But our friendship isn't contingent on like what we do for work. It's just because we've hung out enough now that we're friends. And I think that is very, yeah, that's sort of where we're at. Off to take a step toward progress. I love it, Amanda. Have a great day. Linda, I always appreciate that you're here to have these combos with me. It means a lot to me. Merrick, thank you so much. Yeah, keep doing stuff is the best advice. I agree. It doesn't matter what you do, just do something, and preferably something you enjoy is like stellar advice. And like with intentionality, right? Like I really enjoy like watching TV and eating cheese. And so like I could just choose to do that, but like to what end? What is my goal, right? And so sometimes I choose things that aren't like the most immediately fun thing to do, but I enjoy them because I know they're taking me closer to the things that I ultimately want to accomplish. And that makes it like type 2 fun, right? It's fun when I'm done. And that, I do think it's important to be able to do things that are type 2 fun in addition to things that are like immediate fun, because I think big things always have a bunch of work that's not the most exciting. There's a bunch of admin that goes into doing anything meaningful because it's coordination. It's hard. It takes money. It takes people. It takes, lots and lots of effort. And some of that stuff can be a real bummer to do when you are first getting into it. But the payoff is worth it. The payoff is really worth it. It's really nice. But yeah, with that, I think I'm gonna call this one done. And I'm gonna try to take a big old chunk out of my to-do list before my next call. So y'all, thank you so much. I honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I started this one out feeling pretty down, and I'm ending it feeling great. So I really, really appreciate y'all hanging out today. I appreciate the super active chat. Y'all have been like awesome today. Go out, do something cool. And if you do something cool, show me. Tell me what you did. Tell me what you're up to, because I would love it. Let's keep each other accountable. I'm gonna go do my to-do list. You go do yours, and let's have an awesome day. All right, y'all. Take care.